The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Actually, David, it seems that all the IFIs and development partners of Georgia are trying to better coordinate to guide Georgia's SME sector. And since this community is using the European definition of the sector, there are almost all types of businesses, including medium and quite large corporations as well. EBRD has updated its country strategy for Georgia, focusing on three main priorities. Looking at the document, one can see that quite thorough and extensive work has been done to identify what needs to be changed, whether or not it can be changed, and what role will the EBRD and other donors and development partners have in reaching the new targets as identified in the new country strategy for Georgia for 2022 to 2027. More from our interview with Katarina Hansen, EBRD Regional Director for the Caucasus. We will be talking today about the new strategic directions that EBRD will have towards Georgia in coming years. Looking at these key strategic directions, what is new and how does the new strategy build on the previous one, if it does?
First, it builds very much on the previous strategy. Everything that we did during the last strategy period, which was 5 years, has been fed into the development of the new strategy. We have also gone through a very extensive discussion period with private sector stakeholders, the government, the civil society, research institutions and so forth, to try to identify the main gaps where EBRD can play a role to support the Georgian economy. Based on this, we have formulated a new strategy. And it comes with three main themes. One is built around competitive and resilient features of the economy. The second one is built around inclusive and integrated features of the economy. And the third one is around green and well-governed.
So now let us dig deeper into these strategic objectives. Three main questions that we might have here. What needs to be changed? Can it be changed? And so what is the role of the EBRD in all of this?
First, if we look at the competitive and resilient angles, the private sector needs to enhance its competitiveness compared to its neighbors, compared to the world economy, to be more prominent in the world economy, really. Here, the companies need to become more resilient to economic shocks. They need to be more competitive, both internally, regionally, and globally. It may be, of course, be a bit challenging for a small Georgian company in a remote area to access world markets, but with this last couple of years, when the digitalization and online working has become so much more prominent, the chances have enhanced quite substantially, and it's important to build on this experience and this work that everyone has been doing during these last 2 years, and make sure that the companies continue to have access to finance, access to skills, access to people they can employ with the right skills for sustainable business development. If we look at inclusive and integrated aspects, Georgia is a very open economy. Usually it's very good, but it's also very susceptible to external shocks because of the integration. With this, it's important to strengthen the local business community through business-related reforms, continued reforms to enhance the investment climate. It's also very important not just to focus on the big cities, but to make sure that we focus on all the cities and all the areas of Georgia, so young people don't feel that they need to migrate to the big cities to find a job, that they can really find jobs where they want to live throughout the country. With this also comes sustainable infrastructure, because if a city is to be livable, it both needs reliable energy, it needs reliable bus transit, so you can get to work properly, and all other municipal services that a city may need or a town may need. When it comes to green and well-governed, we work very intensively on diversifying energy supply in Georgia. As you well know, we've been very active in the hydropower sector before. We now also would like to promote diversification to solar and wind. I think it's quite important because they have their seasonalities, renewable energies. It's also very important that the SOE reform continues. It has started, but it needs to continue. And here we approach what we call well-governed. SOEs need to be functioning on commercial basis. They may not necessarily need to be privatized, but they need to have a proper commercial standing. They need to generate revenue. So the central budget doesn't need to support them too much with subsidies.
I've read this strategy, and there are many more reforms that you are referring to. You mentioned energy sector in the document. You also mentioned judiciary reform. In these two directions specifically, there is quite a difficult situation, so to say. In the energy sector, for example, we have Namakhwani case. In the judiciary reform, we have the EU second tranche that the government refused, that it didn't take because of the conditionality that was linked to the judiciary reform.
Big projects means big problems and big issues. So any big projects actually benefits from the involvement of one or several international financing institutions, because we have all the procedures to assess environmental issues, to assess livelihood issues and so forth. So very often there is actually a benefit of involving us and our fellow IFIs in these kind of projects. We fully understand the complexities, but I just don't want to comment on the Namakhwani since we weren't involved and I don't have the details.
I'm not asking you to comment on either cases specifically. I'm bringing it as a context. So I noticed that in this strategy there is this stress of coordinated work of all the IFIs that will be more or less involved in this project.
Coordination between the IFIs is indeed very important, and I think in Georgia we have always coordinated very well, but maybe exceptionally so over last year because the needs were so acute last year. So we established a much closer coordination and even friendship between all the IFIs, and now we are much more aware of what we do, all of us do, so we can cross-refer and make sure that the best IFI for a task at hand takes care of this task. So it's indeed very important. If to talk a bit more about the about the general business climate, last year was maybe a lost year in terms of business climate development in the entire world. I'm not talking about Georgia here, but because everyone was so focused on just getting over the COVID crisis. And just look at our own business delivery. We did twice as much last year as we do in any normal year. This year I hope the volumes would be more back to normal, because it means that the crisis support is not really needed. And but it also meant that while everyone was so focused on getting their business to survive the year and just to apply any measures they could, the more general reforms of the business climate was maybe put a bit on the back burner because people just didn't have time to do it. It possibly also includes all the IFIs. We just didn't have time because we were in crisis mode, and that was everywhere in the entire world. So, but now hopefully it looks a bit more optimistic. Our business volume this year is back to normal, which I see as a very, very good indication of the optimism in the market. We don't need to provide or have not provided any crisis support this year, which is a very, very good signal going forward for the economy. So now there is capacity in the market to actually re-engage and make sure that whatever we lost in time of business promotion and business climate improvements last year, we can hopefully catch up over the year to come.
To look at the overall economy and overall situation in the economy with the tightened, record-breaking tightened monetary policy with the record inflation, what are some of the expectations, like looking forward? Do you see more certainty? Because if we look at the pace of vaccination, it's not what the government expected it could be.
The pace of vaccination is actually a bit concerning, and it's probably the most difficult thing to tackle in the Georgian economy right now. Just also because Georgia is so dependent on incoming tourism. So I really hope the vaccinations will pick up over the winter so we can have a good tourism season next year. It would really support Georgia's recovery and future build the economy. On the what can be done? Well, local currency loans is probably the best way for local companies to ensure that they will survive, because we don't know where the exchange rate is going to go. Georgia, as I said, is a very open economy and is highly dependent on what happens in the neighboring countries and in the world, and it's impossible to control. Companies now seeking hard currency loans is a bit risky, because we just don't know where the exchange rate will go, especially if they have their revenues in lari. So we are very much engaged in local currency financing for SMEs and for corporates in general, both through bonds, through development of capital market tools, and just general normal local currency loans. So we think this is key importance. With regards to the recovery, I sincerely hope that tourism will bounce back. I think that after a long period of sitting at home, a lot of people, including myself, would really like to go traveling. Exactly. And it was very encouraging to see the large number of tourists we had in Georgia last summer. I hope the upcoming winter season will be equally good. And I hope the next summer will see more normal features of tourism. We would be very keen to continue to support Georgia's hospitality sector with enhanced skills, also through in the regions, because the regions have yet to develop further in terms of hospitality. So I sincerely hope that we will have a good health situation in the country coming soon.
New strategies, where do you see strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats coming?
Okay, the strength is the very vibrant SME community, and SMEs here, we use the EU definition of SME, so they can really be quite big Georgian corporates. We see a strong entrepreneurial spirit. We see strong strive towards EU compliance under the DCFTA and association agreement. This is very important because it's a very close and a very big potential export market. We also see very good initiatives from many companies to access markets in maybe a bit unusual places. So and not everyone is focused on the EU, but that is also very good, because people look around the globe and see where can we actually access a market. We see some weaknesses in the composition of the workforce, especially newly graduates. I know there is work ongoing both at government level and with fellow IFIs and donors to support skill enhancement, really. More engineers, more dairy technicians, agriculture, more technical skills that companies will need to be able to meet the standards of the future. We need to make sure that whoever the universities now educate, that these people have the educations that will be required in the future. IT, for example, this is a very prominent area which is only growing. So the more Georgia can do in this area, the better it will be. It's of course absolutely great that Georgia has a lot of people studying law and studying international relationships, but we also need the engineers, we need the IT staff, we need medical professionals and so forth. So there needs to be equal attraction to all these fields of education. This is one of the weaknesses, or a challenge maybe, not a weakness, but a challenge to build upon. The threats, well, the threat is really where the world is today. We don't know where this epidemic will go. I sincerely hope it's that science and the vaccines will actually be able to handle this the health threat very soon, but it's impossible to say. It's really, you would need a crystal ball to say something clever here, and I don't think I could do that. And then what else? The opportunities, yes. The opportunities is just the fact that Georgia is such a welcoming country. It's open for everybody. Nobody needs a visa. Everyone can come and open business. I see the most interesting companies relocating to Georgia right now. We may not finance all of them, but we speak to many of them, because very often they don't need finance. We see companies from Belarus, we see companies from Lebanon and other interesting places relocating to Georgia just because of the openness of the Georgian society, the promising business climate, and just the general welcoming atmosphere in the country. So this is really something that Georgia can and should build upon, and I think many companies in the future will also appreciate this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.